The Boundless Authenticity podcast presents to you the Portal to Ascension series. The Portal to Ascension conference will be held April 21st to 23rd, 2023 at Marina Village Conference Center, San Diego, California. After 3 years of a collective dark night of the soul, the Portal to Ascension conference is returning live and in person and is fully activated for the mission ahead of us all. As energy continues to shift and hidden truths are being uncovered, we are piecing together the fragmented parts of our existence to create awareness of the truth of who we are and remember our connection to the cosmos. This event is all about deprogramming ourselves from the outdated matrix system and remembering who we truly are at the core. Discover ancient origins, uncover hidden truths, and recover your true identity with guest speakers Alan Steinfeld, JJ and Desiree Hertog, Linda Moulton Howe, Robert Schock, Caroline Corey, Robert Edward Grant, Barbara Lamb, Michael Cremo, Ra of Earth, Adam Apollo, Neil Gar, Joan of Angels, John Block, Deborah Gusty, Michelle Anderson, Eric Rankin, Geraldine Orozco, Shareya Dharma, Lori Wheeler, Torcum G, Lori Spania, Tangela, Jenna Layden, Sheila Seppi, Larissa Stowe, Fox Angeles, Stargate Experience, and Share the Light. Get tickets at ascensionconference.com. On this episode of Boundless Authenticity, I had a joyful and interesting conversation with Jenna Layden. Jenna Layden is the founder of Star Family Wisdom and a former global vice president for Whole Foods Market, who has been leading teams and individuals through change and transformation for over 15 years. As an experiencer of supernatural phenomena and ET contact, Jenna has developed a passion for helping humans embrace a multidimensional reality without fear. Through those experiences, Jenna began remembering lives off Earth and is now focused on her mission in this life to be a teacher of lost knowledge and wisdom from the stars. Now a master energy medicine practitioner and cosmic guide, Jenna connects ancient wisdom, new mind-body science, and universal spiritual teachings to assist people in navigating their healing and spiritual transformation. After leaving Whole Foods Market, Jenna founded Star Family Wisdom, a podcast, modern-day mystery school, and community where she offers shamanic initiation and digital courses on spirituality, shamanism, ET contact, and personal evolution. Jenna has been initiated by the Four Winds Society and Quiero lineage of Peruvian shamanism, is a certified Rites of the Munay-Ki shamanic initiation practitioner, and is a certified master energy medicine practitioner. She is also a member of the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma and is a passionate advocate for the indigenous communities and wisdom keepers who have been fierce protectors of humanity's original wisdom. Check out Jenna's website, starfamilywisdom.com. So Jenna, how's it going?
Hey, Jehan, I'm good. Everything's good. It was a little rocky this morning, but everything's good now. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm just chilling.
That's the life.
Absolutely. That's my main goal in life, to just be chilling.
Yeah.
So tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Jenna Layden. Hi, everyone. I am a former global vice president for Whole Foods Market. So I spent many years in the corporate world as a leader and specifically leading teams and people through big transformation and change. But I went through an awakening about 5 years ago, and that led me down a very different path. And so I'm now a spiritual and cosmic guide. I'm the founder of Star Family Wisdom, which is a mystery school for people who are on the spiritual and cosmic evolution path. And I'm also a shamanic initiation practitioner and master energy medicine practitioner now. So life has changed a lot in the last few years.
I'm telling you, that sounds like a drastic change. Oh man, isn't that crazy how stuff works? You're in a boardroom one day and next thing you know, boom, enlightened.
Next thing you know, ETs contact you and your world changes.
Absolutely. So what exactly does your work entail?
Thanks. Yeah, it's A lot of things right now. My big focus is shamanic practice. I integrate that into pretty much everything we do at Star Family Wisdom. It's a passion of mine now to help people reconnect with our ancestral ways, our ancient wisdom, which I believe is, wisdom that came to humans from the stars. And there's so much power in that practice and in the tools that we get through shamanic practice. So I love working with that. And I lead people through shamanic initiation and through various forms of spiritual initiation processes. So a lot of our work at Star Family Wisdom is giving people tools and resources that, helps take a lot of these esoteric and kind of, big concepts and bring it down to earth in practical ways where people can do their own healing and transformation work at home. So we're also experiencers of ET contact. So we also help people understand their star family connections and help starseeds, who are on the path of awakening and remembering their memories. So I also run a podcast, the Star Family Wisdom Podcast. So we have these sorts of conversations and chat about all things cosmic and consciousness. And that's really our focus. We love just supporting people in their transformation and in remembering our connection with star family and star beings who once walked this earth.
Awesome. I like it. So what are some easy ways that we can reconnect with our ancestral wisdom?
Good question. So, I think one of the easiest ways, if you're a person who's not wanting to sign up for a big program or go through a big training, starting by just reconnecting with nature and reconnecting with Mother Earth. I think a lot of folks who get on the spiritual path, and especially the cosmic, path, if people are really interested in what's out there and, higher, expanded states of consciousness and that sort of thing, it's really easy to get ungrounded. And so much of our ancestral knowledge and practices really centered around our connection with Mother Earth, first and foremost. So, it's all good to, want to make connection with the spiritual realms and higher intelligences and all of that. And that can be a really incredible part of the journey, but just focusing on our connection with the beings, the life force energy, and Mother Earth herself, and recognizing that we live in a world that is filled with gorgeous life, and we're stewards of that life. And I think so many of our ancestors lived with that deep knowing that they were stewards of life. They're not here to take and pillage and all that. It's not just about us, right? It's about everyone, and it's about being stewards for the greater good. And I think if we just put that lens on, that alone has the power to help us transform and heal. And I think that's the biggest, most important part of all of the aspects of ancestral, knowledge we can connect with.
That's awesome. I agree with you. And I know that everybody wants to relate to you on a real human level, because like you said, a lot of these concepts can be very difficult to explain and just as difficult to understand,
Yeah.
It reminds me of Dolores Cannon's Convoluted Universe. She nailed it with that title.
Yes, totally.
So tell us how you got from being a VP at Whole Foods to this position. What was your journey? What moments transformed you?
Yeah, I think I want to back up maybe and just acknowledge that even though I was a VP at Whole Foods and I had these, higher level leadership roles, there were also many, many years, probably the majority of my career, where I had imposter syndrome. I had a lot of anxiety. I had periods of deep depression, and I didn't even always know like where that was coming from, right? I just lived with it like a lot of people do. We just push through life and we power through our days and we find coping mechanisms rather than understanding what the like underlying cause of that is. So, I think it's really easy to like look at people and compare and, judge, right? And think, oh, well, that person has had it figured out for a long time. So it might have been easy, to make the transition into doing what I'm doing now. And I think we project those sorts of ideas onto all sorts of people. And so I want to just share that I was in a dark place at times, even though on the outside things looked good. And so, part of my transition into this work was recognizing that I wasn't okay at times and that I was carrying a lot of trauma. And once that acknowledgement had happened, and once I got curious and once I started to ask the questions about, okay, I know this is now stemming from something deeper, some wound, some past thing, right? That my soul needs to reconcile and integrate and heal from. Once I acknowledged that and asked those questions and set those intentions, then the path started to unfold. But then it was hard work and, excavating those wounds, abandonment issues, a sense of, unworthiness, lack, and abundance sort of issues that stemmed from my family environment. So, even though I had a career where I was successful and I was secure, I also always had underlying fear about money and finances. And we don't talk about these things. We don't talk about the fact that, so often we are just carrying so many fears and so many traumas that aren't necessarily ours to carry anymore. And they might have just, been imprinted on us from our family or societal programming. We're living in a world that has dealt with a lot of traumatic stuff. We're still experiencing it on a daily basis. And so, it was this process of recognizing that I needed to go into the darkness and like see what was there and recognize like where those wounds had come from and do that deep healing work on those wounds and rewiring, rewiring my brain to even think positive things. Like there was a period of time where, again, even though I was successful, my brain would just be going down these like negative trains of thought, right? I was stuck in negative loops, right? My brain had been wired and programmed for trauma response. And so it was this just big journey of understanding all of that, learning about it, because I'd never been taught any of this growing up. Right? I'd been atheist. I really was not connected to transformational healing, spiritual work. And so the first couple of years, of making that transition into this work was hard, because when we're facing some of that darkness and those fears and the trauma we've got to clear, we got to feel a lot of stuff sometimes that we don't want to feel initially, and then we find the tools to transform and do the work, like a lot of what you're doing, with hypnotherapy and NLP. So yeah, it was a lot. I think I carried a lot of what a lot of people carry, and especially as a woman in this life, there's also a lot of trauma wrapped up in, being a woman, that we're clearing and healing from.
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. And there's so much stuff that we're going through on a subconscious level that's coming from all the way back. Yeah. Our connections to past lives and things like that, people don't take into consideration, why do I do this thing that I do? It's because thousands of years ago, right. I was afraid of something, Right. So it's funny. And I'm glad that you say that. I'm glad that we have people like you that can get out there and have these real world experiences and see both sides, what people would consider success, but it doesn't bring joy. It doesn't fulfill the hierarchy of needs. And then you can come and tell your story to other people that can then begin to break through the societal paradigm that that's what happiness is supposed to be. You know, it's I don't think it's a very fair thing, but we're all kind of subjected to it. And then we live our lives sabotaging, as I like to say, because we're striving for something that isn't there, you know?
Right.
So having said that, I don't even know what direction I want to go in. Let's talk about what we were talking about before we started recording, about you had an experience that you released some energy and some things came up for you.
Yeah. So you mentioned self-sabotage, and I had an experience this morning that once I, got through it and got to the other side of it, and am, having this conversation with you now, it seems so purposeful and kind of ironic and humorous that life, universe, spirit would have, kind of coordinated this to happen today. Because part of my shamanic, practice is doing a lot of energy work. And even though I'm leading people in that work and leading people through initiation, I'm still peeling back layers and healing myself. And I think all of us are going to be on that journey, for the rest of our lives. And so in the process of doing some energy work this last week, I knew some shifting and clearing was happening, and I'd identified a couple of issues that I was still working with. But then this morning, after big ceremony had taken place last night, I had a big wave of emotional release start to happen. So when we work in the energetics, for people, who aren't familiar with this, when we work in the energy field, that gets to the root cause, right, of the imprint, the issue, the information, the karmic thing or pattern, right, that is, driving whatever behaviors, reactions are happening in this life for us. So once we've cleared that from the energy field, well, then that filters down to the mind and then the body. So then we might have some, additional releasing that has to occur. So that started to happen this morning. And so I was feeling stuff, I was feeling negative emotions that I didn't want to feel on the day of doing a podcast interview. And so while I was in that place of feeling the stuff that just needed to come out, I had one of those moments of, I'm just going to cancel. I don't want to do this today. And I also had the awareness that I was just in a releasing process. And so I stayed in observer mode and acknowledged that, and said, we're going to just work through this today. And so I went through just a process of some of my shamanic work, doing some journeying to, get to like the deeper part of my subconscious and continue rewriting the story, right, that I'd been rewriting around this particular issue. Did some sound, work, right, to get energy moving, did some yoga, really let the body start to move the energy out. And so I engaged in just a lot of different practices today. And while I was, feeling some of those like darker emotions this morning, I was also saying, thank you. I was also saying, I know what's happening and I'm grateful for this. It doesn't feel good right now, but I'm grateful this is getting released and it's coming out of me. And I was calling in my team for help, and I was working with some of the power animals, we work with in shamanic practice to help me navigate and guide my way through it. And it's one of those examples, I think, of transformation and sometimes easier said than done. I've had some practice here on, putting all these pieces together to move through that sort of experience. And so my transformations are happening quicker. But it was just one of those like real life examples of almost self-sabotaging. Like I almost did it. Like I almost self-sabotaged, and I thought it was like so ironic and kind of funny that would have happened on the day of talking to you, since you're all about, healing self-sabotage behaviors.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like a little birdie told me to, because I never send reminders to anyone And I was like, I have a feeling Jenna's going to flake on me. So
You felt what I was feeling.
yeah, I am like that though. I listen a lot. I pick up a lot of things, and I just knew to send it to you.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
That was helpful, because that was that little moment of, okay, I'm getting close to the podcast interview. I have a choice point, right? And so we always have choices in these moments. We always have choices of how we respond and how we rise above and, transcend whatever's happening. And sometimes that's like an act of will, like an act of power to say, I am doing this. I am moving beyond this. And so I think, it was one of those moments of knowing this is happening for a reason. This is happening for a reason, so that I can also share with people like how that feels. Because I think so many people experience that, but we also don't really get taught how to move through it. We don't get taught how to move through those hard moments and how to recalibrate quickly,
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because there's a fair amount of ambiguity around exactly that. How do I notice when I'm about to self-sabotage, and how do I push through it? Right. And it's almost like they whisper it on the internet, but nobody's shouting it out loud and saying, hey, this is what you have to do. So it's great when people like us can get together and say, hey, listen, we're not perfect either. It's about embodying that imperfection and knowing when to take a step back and when to push through it. And don't think that just because you see someone and you perceive them to be at a certain level of intellect and insight and awareness that they are absent from challenges,
Yeah.
And that's what I find is a defining factor for a lot of people who then want to explore their spirituality even further, because there's like a platform where it's like, it's almost like they're putting you up on a pedestal, which is a form of judgment too. And they don't want to follow you into that way of higher thinking and feeling and being, because it seems unreachable by their standards,
Right. And there's a lot of, good marketing out there, right? Like there's the spiritual movement has grown so much that there's good marketing to make, the like dream life of spirituality, right? All the beautiful parts of spiritual life, like to make that look amazing and this state of perfection that someone's always in. And I see where there's also a lot of coaches and leaders and people who are talking about, doing the deeper work and the shadow work. And I'm really loving that that's like coming forth more now. I think that is growing, and I think people's awareness. But you got to be careful, because there is a lot of flashy marketing out there that does put us back into that state of judgment or that state of, lack of empowerment even, or, puts this unattainable vision of life out there in front of people.
Yeah. So, don't you get excited when you find something that needs to be healed though? I do.
Totally. Yes, totally. Yes. Because now I know it's like, oh, good. Oh, good. This is great. Because now I am going to be able to have a different experience going forward. I'm going to be able to rise to a new level. I'm going to find a part of myself that I lost. We talked about that last night in the shamanic class I was leading, how, when we have these traumas and we're carrying all of this like distorted energy in our field, that chips away, part of our essential soul energy. And when we deal with that trauma and the distortion and the negative energy that's come into our field, we can then call back our essential energy, the energy of ourselves that contains more of our gifts and talents and strengths. And so, it's like when you hit one of those moments of, oops, I've got a wound that's triggered, or something's coming up that I didn't know was there to be healed. Now it's like, okay, this is a good thing. It might not feel good for a few days while I'm working through the, healing process, or however long it might take. But I know that process is necessary, and it's going to be a good one. And I also continue to receive validation from spirit every time, when that starts to occur, it's like, no, you're on the right path. This is the work you need to be doing.
Awesome. So you mentioned your shamanic classes. Tell us about that stuff. What exactly is a shamanic initiation? What does a typical shamanic session with you look like? Give us all the goods.
Yeah. So shamanic initiation is a process that one goes through to receive energy transmissions and to get initiated as a shaman. So to truly, walk the path as a shaman and really integrate your connection with all of the energies and archetypes and do the balancing work to live in a state of oneness with spirit. It's really ideal to go through a formal initiation where you get connected to a lineage of shamanism. So the lineage of shamanism I studied or got guided to and that I now practice is a Peruvian lineage called from the Q'ero people, who are descendants of the Incans, and their wisdom, I think, is some of the most pure in the world when it comes to shamanism, because they escaped the colonial conquest when the Spanish showed up, and they retreated high into the Andes Mountains and preserved their practices, their way of life, their spirituality for hundreds of years without interacting with the outside world until a few decades ago. And they came to the Western world a few decades ago and said, you're in trouble and we want you to have our medicine. We want you to know our wisdom. We want you to spread this medicine, this practice around the world as fast as you can so that new shamans can start to work with the world in a different way. And the rites of the Munay-Ki is the specific shamanic initiation that I take people through, and that stems from this lineage of shamanism, and it's a 10-week process, and each week involves a specific energy transmission or connecting you with different archetypal energies, or like archangels, like the keepers of the upper world, the keepers of the lower world. And in these classes, what we do is the energy transmission, but we also do shamanic practice, and we learn how to work in ceremony, and we learn how to work with these different energies that are present and can support us. And we learn how to actively shift energy in our energy fields and call in, new energy into our energy fields. And so we start to, just engage the world of energy in this new way. And these energetic transmissions that happen over the course of the 10 weeks are really designed to activate someone's potential as a healer, as a shaman, to activate their perceptual abilities, to activate their healing abilities with their hands, to activate their ability to expand their consciousness in the way that it needs to be able to walk the shamanic path fully. So it's a beautiful process. And some of the students last night actually were sharing from the first class that they were, already feeling some really big shifts. So I love taking people through that. And we do that in a group setting. And then I also do one-on-one work, here and there with people who are interested. And in that process, I can actually work in someone's energy field and identify where the imprint or the information of a particular issue or original wound or karmic pattern is living, and we can extract that and get that out of the field, and then work through different tools and practice to help that person in whatever, integration or releasing, might need to happen, or in maybe connecting to destiny. A lot of what we do in shamanism is about releasing the past so that we're not held prisoner to the past, and so that we can, become really good trackers with spirit and connect to the most ideal destiny and connect to higher versions, of what our destiny could be, and work with spirit to, bring that into the physical. So there's all sorts of things, we can do. It really depends on what's going on with someone and, what they need at this point in their life and, what trajectory they're on. So shamanic practice is super versatile that way, which I love. We have so many tools that help us access, the chambers of our psyche and our soul, and help us excavate those wounds and clear energy and, do manifestation and visioning work. Shamanic practice is also manifestation practice, and, it doesn't really get talked about that way. But, I talk a lot about manifestation at Star Family Wisdom because I love that part of our, spiritual life and, dance with the universe. So we're always co-creating with the universe. And that's really fun to be able to be in that place. And that's fun, once someone's on this path and either doing one-on-one sessions or, the initiation programs, it's like, then you get to that point where you start to co-create and you start to play with the universe and vision with the universe. So it's a really wide ranging, process and, way we can work with people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Let's talk about star family connections and star seeds. What is that?
Yeah. So star seed, I think, means a soul who is here on Earth, who has had other life experiences off Earth, who has come maybe from other civilizations to incarnate here on Earth. So for instance, my soul, after years of exploration now and doing shamanic practice, even to access more of my soul memories, I know that my soul has spent more time incarnating in other civilizations than it has here on Earth. I've had lots of incarnations here, but my soul is just a little more used to other civilizations. So some of my kind of trauma or wounding that I carried that was partially wrapped up in my anxiety and depression for a while was the fact that my soul wasn't used to Earth, and my soul felt a little lonely here, because we also incarnate with a soul group usually. So in the spiritual realm, souls are assigned to different groups, and they might be maybe, 8, 10, 12 souls in a group. It depends. And those are souls with whom you are constantly incarnating and having different life experiences with. And those are souls with whom you get really bonded. And so a lot of times the people we're most bonded with in our lives, or that are the biggest players, in our lives, are people that might be part of our soul group. Well, in this life, a lot of my soul group are somewhere else. And there's only a couple people from my soul group here. And that led to this kind of sense of loneliness for a long time because I hadn't met them for a long time until my adulthood. So I recognized through this process of self-exploration and accessing more of my memories and developing my, psychic abilities to do so, it became clear that, my soul has had these other experiences in advanced civilizations. And part of what unfolded for me in my awakening process was this just kind of bombardment of memories and wisdom that came back to me and integrated and helped me very quickly go from being atheist and not knowing any of what we're talking about today to, in a very short period of time, talking to people about the mechanics of existence, right? And how the universe works. And it was just this incredible process of recognizing that my soul is connected to beings that are not here on Earth. And we talk about star family because, one, I think aliens is kind of derogatory. Two, I think, ET is kind of an old term, and we're waking up to the fact that we are not alone. ETs actually have been part of our Earth history. And we're just now at a point in our consciousness evolution and in our technological evolution that we can look around the world and dissect our cultural origin stories and start to piece together the lost history of what's happened on Earth. So humans have interacted with star races, star beings in ancient times, and there are a lot of souls here on Earth who have soul bonds and connections with other beings in our galaxy, in the universe, and that is happening right now on Earth so that we can awaken to the fact that we're not alone. Because our civilization obviously has gone down a warring, violent path, and that has not made it conducive for first contact, right? So first contact has to happen in a different way. So instead of a bunch of starships showing up in our atmosphere and star races announcing that they're here, many thousands and thousands, millions of souls that have had experiences as star races volunteered to come incarnate here on Earth and awaken our memory of our connection with the star races and be part of what I like to call the transition team. So, we're at a point in our civilization, I just got chills when I said that, we're at a point in our civilization where, we're transitioning eras and we're evolving to a point where we are almost ready, to become part of the galactic community. And we're almost ready to come out of this, less advanced, state that we've been in. But that process of preparation has just had to look a little different on this planet, which is why a lot of star seeds are showing up. And like I said earlier, I have, through my research, my memories, my knowing, have come to an understanding that a lot of our spiritual knowledge and shamanic wisdom on the planet, some of the best, right, came from the gods and goddesses who were star beings who interacted with humans. And so even what we practice in terms of our spirituality was, gifted to us, was knowledge that was gifted to us. And we're just now remembering that. And that's why at Star Family Wisdom, our goal is to, integrate as many different, spiritual practices and traditions and ways of, embodying our spirituality and our healing, with the understanding that came from our star family, and it's going to help us reconnect with our star family.
Hey, you explained that beautifully. I have nothing to say. Haven't you, in spite of being an atheist and all the things that you experienced in your life, weren't there not moments throughout where you kind of suspected something was different about you?
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, because there were times during my career at Whole Foods where people would say things to me, because I was young. I became a global VP at the age of 30. And I also didn't have a college degree. So I moved up the ranks really fast. And again, without a lot of credentials or training, and I would just know things. I would just know what to do. And I just knew how to lead people. And I recognize now that part of what was happening at times was claircognizance. I also was able sometimes to perceive the future, but it was really subtle. So I did have kind of, I guess, heightened perceptual abilities at times, in my kind of growing up years and early adulthood, but I just wasn't tuned into it all the way. But I would have these moments of thinking, how do I know this? I know that decision the leadership team is making at Whole Foods, I know we shouldn't do that, because I know that we're not supposed to go down that path. We're supposed to go down this path. But I would never know exactly why I would know those things. And it wasn't until I got closer to the actual, awakening occurring that then some of those experiences started to just get a little more profound, and it started to make me question, okay, that something's going on here. Something's going on here. What's happening? There were even times like my parents, would talk about as a child, there were a couple of anomalous things that they couldn't quite understand. Like there were times where I wasn't yet at an age where I could read, but when we would be driving, I would be reading billboards. But I think what was actually happening is I was reading the minds of the people in the car. I wasn't reading the billboards. I was psychically picking up on what other people were thinking as they were reading the billboards. And that was happening a lot in my career at Whole Foods, right? Just being able to read a room, being able to just tune in to what someone needed from me, or how I could guide someone down the right path. And all that was just this intuitive faculty that everyone has. And it was just being used in this really like integrated, natural way where it wasn't too obvious. I wasn't having like these really extraordinary experiences until I got to a point where I think I, could handle it. So.
Yep. Totally resonates. I knew from the time I was very young that I was not like others, so to speak. And I had a lot of strange things that happened to me as well that were like, totally out there, whether it was dreaming of being taken up in crafts and being shown this planet and other planets and things like that. And it was done in a very gentle way too. Yeah. It was almost like they were letting me know you're one of us, but you have to be here for this purpose. And I would see a lot of different entities and beings and things when I was a kid. And I tried to tell my parents and they'd be like, shh, don't do that.
Oh, wow. So you could actually see them back then. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. From the time I was about 3 or 4 years old, I could see them. And when I could make a full sentence, I would try to describe them to my mom and she'd be like, shh, don't say that. You're going to scare your father.
Oh, gosh. I feel like that happens to so many kids. Like so many parents are like, oh, no, that's just your imagination. Like I have a friend who has a daughter who's maybe about 4 or 5 years old now. And last year, she just started randomly one day talking about coming from a fire planet and having lived on the fire planet in our solar system, the sun, and then having gone to the rings of Saturn after living on the fire planet. And then after the rings of Saturn, incarnating on Earth and choosing her as her mommy. And then she just moved on to some other conversation, like kids do. And luckily my friend came to me and was like, what do you think about that? And I was like, oh my God, she was accessing a memory. Like that sounds, and I've actually heard that in some other case studies that there are some children who have talked about, being on the fire planet. And this is a child who's not, tuning into any of this sort of content, right? Her mom isn't putting her in front of these sorts of videos or these sorts of conversations. So I think more and more that's happening, and parents need to tune into that and ask questions and get curious and be like, well, tell me more. Tell me why you incarnated on Earth. Who did you talk to about that? I want to know all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I had that, because when I was 5 or 6, I used to just bust out in this strange language that wasn't English and it wasn't anything else either,
Cool.
So yeah, I had a lot of strange things happen, but I think what you were saying is a great segue into spontaneous past lives, because I know for myself, I remember being about 9 years old and tapping into a previous life that I had in the United States, in Pennsylvania. I live in Barbados, if you didn't know that. I felt like I needed to go there at some point to complete something. And I actually ended up doing that, but that's how I ended up getting on this path. But I had plenty of other experiences as well, where it's like I used to live on a planet and the sky was pink all the time. That's the only thing I can remember from it. And I've had experiences of just remembering people My friend Shelley Kerr, if you've ever heard of her, she's called the Past Life Lady. I've spoken to her many times about some of the past life experiences that I've had where I've been a leader of like some kind of infantry or army or something like that. And same thing as you, people always tell me, you're a really great leader. You always seem to know what to do, things like that, you know? So unpack that concept for like your end and tell us about that.
Well, I love what you just talked about, how it's like a lot of our past life experiences then culminate in the talents and skills that we have in this life, or even the interests that we have, or the places we want to go. And so, yeah, I think not everyone's going to have spontaneous past life memories in like a real flashy way. I don't think that's like necessary for everyone. Because it's not necessarily like relevant to the life experience we're having all of the time. So sometimes we can go down this path of like wanting to explore all of that when it's not all of it's relevant. And so, I think for me, because I was atheist, I needed to have a couple extraordinary experiences of spontaneous past life recall to just jar me out of the previous state of consciousness I was in, to prove to me, that it was true. And it happened in meditation. And I had, I'd gone really deep in my meditation practice as part of my healing with the anxiety and depression stuff. And I had recognized, oh gosh, I need to get my mind under control here. And I need to learn how to quiet my mind. And I'd finally gotten to that place of being in a like really still, deep place. And I was listening to some gong music and like Tibetan sound bowl music. And if someone's in hypnotherapy, I'm sure you've talked about this, on the pod before, you kind of signal to someone, right, when when it's time for a memory to be accessed, or if you're doing past life regression. And so I had set an intention to want to learn more about my past lives. I started to recognize, I think I might have a karmic issue with this particular person I had been in a relationship with. And it was after setting that intention, be careful with intentions, they come true. I was in a deep meditation and boom, it was like just instantaneous, so fast. I had 2 visions come in. And again, I had been in this just super still, super deep place. No thoughts were happening. And as fast as the first one came in, the second one came in, and I just immediately knew. What I was looking at. I immediately knew who I was in the visions. I immediately knew who the other people were and how they connected to this life and how it was telling the story of the abandonment wound I was dealing with. And it was incredible because it just was this moment of, well, that happened and that was real. And I just knew instantaneously what I was seeing and how it related to this life. And that helped me on my healing process. And then I think, by just continuing to stay open to that, and even in some of the shamanic practice, you can do specific journeys that help you access some of those memories if they're relevant for you. I think, just as in getting, the brain wired in a way where it can retrieve information from the field easier, those sorts of spontaneous recalls can happen easier. And so I've had that happen, at different places I've visited. So I live in Sedona, Arizona now, and most people probably are familiar with it, but if not, it's a powerful energy vortex in the desert southwest of the United States. And it's in the area of the ancestral homelands of the Navajo and Hopi people. And the Hopi people have an origin story of entering the fourth world, our current era, after coming out of the canyons. So they had been descendants of the third world, the previous civilization before this one, had survived it, had gone into the earth and come out of the canyons here when the dust had settled and they could, repopulate the earth. So that's part of their origin story. And coming to this land has been significant for me as it relates to past lives. And I didn't quite know that at the time I was coming here. I was being guided and I knew it was important for some reason. But when I visited Canyon de Chelly, which is one of the major canyons here in Arizona, I was visiting Spider Rock. And I just sat down to do a little meditation. And I had had a major fear triggered the day before. And so I had asked the keeper of the lower world and, my shamanic practice to just help me like reveal what that was about so I can heal it. What was that trigger about? Where did that come from? Because it didn't feel like it came from this life. I couldn't think of anything that would have caused that. It was a fear of heights thing. And so I'm sitting there in this meditation at Canyon de Chelly, like looking at Spider Rock. I close my eyes. Boom, I have this past life recall of being on this land and being part of a group that was migrating, and we were traversing like really steep terrain, and my father fell to his death. And that was the original wound that triggered my fear of heights in this life. And it was part of my soul's path to come back to this land and reconnect with, I think, one of the spots where it happened, or around the area it may have happened. And it was, just the process, I think, of reconnecting energetically with that area of earth that allowed that to come through. And so it happens in all sorts of ways for people. It happens in really subtle ways. It happens in more profound, obvious ways. I'll give an example of like my mom. So my mom has evolved with me on this journey, but has still kind of remained a little bit atheist and kind of resistant a little, to some of these topics. But she, over the last few years, had developed a really, really, really deep fascination with the Holocaust, and was just devouring book after book after book, and had started to visit Germany because one of her friends had moved over there. So all of a sudden there was this kind of culmination of this interest in Germany in this particular time period, and some very intense emotions she was feeling around it. Most people will feel emotion around that particular topic because it's a very big traumatic issue that happened on Earth. And her level of intensity was far greater than even mine, would be on that topic. And it indicated for me, I think she's having a little bit of past life recall in this process. And it wasn't totally conscious for her, but we talked about it. And we talked about like just the process of revisiting that and being able to feel emotion about that and move through it and read all of these stories of survivors and integrate that. Like that seems like this important part of her healing journey. And I think, and we agree now, that she had a past life in the Holocaust and did not survive. And incidentally, she was born in the 50s after World War II ended. So it kind of adds up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, Jenna, you'll be speaking at Portal to Ascension in April.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun. It's a live event, and there's just some incredible speakers. And I'm going to be speaking on the rise of the divine feminine, and specifically how we need to work with energy and understand the polarities of energy that we're working with in the universe and in this dimension in particular, and how we can understand the expression or like the qualities of those energies and how that shows up in our current civilization, how that shows up in each one of us, no matter, what we identify as in this life. And it's about understanding the power of divine feminine energy and how we can all integrate that in a healed way, and how we can heal the masculine at the same time. And ultimately, by going a little deeper and understanding how those polarities work in our universe and the qualities that each of those energies like brings to the table, that's going to help us in our process of rebalancing those energies on the planet, because that's part of why we're in the situation we're in. Those energies have gotten really out of balance, and the expression of those energies have become very distorted and have resulted in a lot of what we're experiencing. So I'm excited to talk about it because I think, again, no matter like what you identify as in this life, that is an important topic for all of us. And it's the divine feminine power of the universe that is part of our ability to create and to create the lives we want to experience. So that's going to be my specific talk, and we'll weave in some ancient star race connections too.
Awesome. Jenna, where can we find you?
Check me out on Instagram. You can find me, Jenna Layden, and you can also find our Star Family Wisdom accounts. We have Star Family Wisdom Mystery School, Star Family Wisdom Geometry, because we're sacred geometry nerds. We love working with sacred geometry also. And you can find our website, www.starfamilywisdom.com, and we're also on YouTube. So come hang out with us.
Awesome. Jenna, thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast.
It was amazing. Thank you. Thank you for creating a space where we can be authentic and have these sorts of conversations. I love it.
Awesome. I love this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your consciousness of the brain if they get in the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms, or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean? You know, all the big questions of life, we have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity podcast.